Hi there, my name is Brittany Williams and you're watching my video presentation of my continuous quality improvement project via University of Nevada, Las Vegas. A little quick blurb about myself. I am an ICU nurse and have been for 6 years, and I'm currently a graduate student with the School of Nursing at UNLV, hoping that in a few years I'll graduate as a family nurse practitioner. The objectives of what we're trying to achieve today with this presentation is to define what a CQI project is and highlight the components of the PDSA cycle. That is what we do in order to conduct a CQI project, and talk about specifically what I've done for my own project. At the end, we'll review the outcomes and see how I did, and I'll do a little self-reflection on the end on how I could do things differently in the future. So a CQI project is continuous quality improvement. Basically, the problem we're facing today is we live in this modern technological world with, especially in reference to healthcare, we have a wealth of data at our fingertips ever since we've implemented electronic health records. So the question is, what can we do with this data in order to use it in a meaningful way? If we just let this data float out in space, we're not achieving anything. But through CQI, we can take this data, organize it, and go from there. What we can do next is identify a room for improvement, implement a intervention or change idea, and analyze those results to see if we can achieve the outcomes we've set out to achieve. And in doing so, we're going to improve patient safety outcomes and improve quality of healthcare overall. What I've included for you here is a picture of barcoded medication administration. If you're a nurse, you know what this is immediately. Ever since the implementation of electronic health records, this has been a major mainstay that has reduced medication errors in hospitals. And this idea was born from a CQI project. So CQI really does have lasting benefits in healthcare. The PDSA method, or Plan, Do, Study, Act, is the way in which many CQI projects are carried out, including my own. And there's 4 phases. And the planning is where we identify that goal and the change idea or intervention we're going to implement and how we're going to collect data. In the do phase, we implement that change idea, collect data along the way, and then we move into the study phase at the conclusion, where we analyze that data and the results. And then moving into the final phase, act, that's where we decide either we've achieved the outcomes we set to achieve and what we're doing is working, also known as hold the gain, or we can make changes in order to get closer to the outcome that we set out to achieve and repeat the PDSA cycle again, hoping to make a clinically significant outcome attainable. So let's talk about what I did for my personal CQI project. I studied the effect of Weight Watchers on my weight loss. So in the first phase of my plan was to first identify the problem, which is weight gain and overeating. So my baseline data is that I'm 5'5". I started out as 178 pounds and my BMI was 29.1, which is in the overweight category. The goals I set for myself, the outcomes I'm hoping to attain, are to stay within the healthy eating zone that's designated by Watchers 85% of the time. Over 2 months, as well as in that 2 months time, I'm hoping to lose 10 to 12 pounds, and at the end to have an overall reduction in my BMI. In order to reach these goals, my change idea is that I'm going to implement the Weight Watchers program. I'm going to use their point system and recipe bank to track my plan and track my diet. I'm also going to reduce spontaneous eating. This is a visual representation of the process of which I go through each day on Weight Watchers. To briefly summarize it, I know it's difficult to see the small text, so I do apologize, is I ask myself at the start of a new day, like, am I going to work today or do I have the day off? If I'm going to work, this takes a lot of planning and preparation because I work 12-hour shifts with short breaks. So I need to plan ahead on my days off for these days. I also need to say no to temptation at work. Either my work is notorious for having cookies or donuts, and I need to learn to say no to those things. On days that I have off, the next question I ask myself is, am I going to stay home today or am I going out? I anticipated at the beginning of the project that staying home were going to be the easiest days for me because I keep a lot of healthy food in the house, and I also enjoy cooking and meal planning and preparation. But going out, I kind of knew going into this, at least I anticipated that this would be another challenge for me, because when you're being out, being social with friends, family, coworkers, it's easy to just want to indulge and order that appetizer, order dessert, or order an extra cocktail, and these things add up quickly and push you very easily out of the healthy eating zone. This is a fishbone diagram of the barriers to my success, if these are the things that lead to weight gain for me. So I've separated them into 6 categories. The first is time. Planning healthy meals takes a lot of forethought and time and preparation. The second category is personal preferences of mine. For example, I'm a pescatarian, and this leads to less options for me. Also, I put in here about how much I love sugar and carbohydrates, which is the food group you generally want to avoid when you're trying to lose weight. Lifestyle, this is what I kind of touched on earlier about eating out at restaurants and being social. These things do get in the way when you're on a diet. And moving to the top left of the screen, we have psychological. These are impulse cravings or stress eating, for example. In the top middle, we have physiological, which is hunger, rate of metabolism, and genetics. And financial is the last category. So this is the cost of groceries. In general, health food is more expensive than processed and high dense calorie food, so the financial could be a potential barrier. So moving on to the second phase, this is where I implemented that change idea, which is Weight Watchers. I implemented this from February 1st to March 34th. I tracked my meals and points daily, attempting to stay within the healthy eating zone. On days that I was not in the healthy eating zone, I marked the reason why, and I separated them into categories that correlate with the fishbone diagram we saw on the last slide. I weighed myself once a week, and I remeasured my BMI at the end of the PDSA cycle. So this is some of my raw data. What you're looking at is the calendar for February. The blue boxes are the days that I was able to stay within the healthy eating zone, and the alternate colors represent different categories for why I didn't that day. The green represents lifestyle. For example, I was at a baby shower or in a birthday party that month. And the orange is the time barrier here. These are days that I was at work and I didn't properly plan ahead for my meals, and I ended up having a hard time staying within that healthy eating zone. This is the calendar for March, the second month of my cycle. And again, the blue are the days I was successful, and we see green and orange here. Those are the categories we talked about on the last slide. And then there's 2 categories that came into play this month that were not. Sick is the physiological barrier. That's the pink box you're seeing. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into my results. And also the yellow one here is a psychological barrier. I remember that day my roommates bought pizza, and I didn't have to eat it, but I did anyway because it smelled so good. So that's a impulse eating psychological barrier for me. This is a pie chart as to the reasons that were most common that I didn't stay in that healthy eating zone. And as you can see on the left side of the screen, the lifestyle barrier is the most common for me. It takes up half of the days that I exceeded that healthy eating zone. So this is something I'm going to need to focus on in my next PDSA cycle. This is a line graph of the weight loss I achieved. I started out at 178.3 pounds and finished at 169 pounds. So these are the outcomes I set out for originally, and let's see how I did. So on the right side of the screen, I wanted to stay in the healthy eating zone 85% of the time, and on the left you can see that I did not meet this outcome. I was only in the healthy eating zone 76.2% of the time. On weight loss, I set out hoping to make 10 to 12 pounds of weight loss in 2 months, and unfortunately I was this close. I lost 9.7 pounds. And the third outcome, however, I did reach. I wanted an overall reduction in my BMI, and I went from 29.1 to 28.1. So in phase 4, the ACT, this is where I analyze how I would do things differently before I restart the PDSA cycle. So for me, the lifestyle barrier seems to be the #1 reason I couldn't stay within the healthy eating zone. And if I can adjust the way I see going out with my friends and family, maybe enjoy their company, but not so much indulge in the high calorie things we're eating and drinking, then I think I'll be more successful. So I'm going to focus on this when entering my next PDSA cycle. A little bit of reflection. The first bullet point here is how I believe my data was slightly skewed. I did end up having pneumonia for 2 weeks during this PDSA cycle, and I started off really strong, losing a lot of weight, and once I got sick, the weight loss kind of stopped. So I do think that this skewed my data, and the outcomes may have been different had I been healthy. However, that's only speculation. I did identify for certainly that social life is a barrier and that I need to plan ahead for days that I'm eating out. However, I am proud of the progress I've made. My friends and family have commented that they see a difference in me, and I feel more confident in my appearance too. So moving forward, I'm going to repeat the PDSA cycle and focus on the social life being a barrier for me and how I can improve that in the future. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening, and best of luck in your own personal projects.